Welcome back to my channel Conquer the Fear. In this video, we are going to discuss about how do you expose the REST endpoints in Spring Boot. So if you are looking out to create a RESTful web services, and that too using the Spring Boot, this is one of the fantastic video that are going to explain you how to build the standalone application, the production ready Spring Boot application with minimal fuss. Okay, so please stay back in the video because I'm going to explain you everything right from step by steps, like what is a prerequisite, how you can download the project from the starter initializer, how you can import that particular project in the IntelliJ, and then you can very well develop the project setups, other things, and then how you can expose your endpoints. So the first endpoints what you're going to develop is the hello world, and then we'll gradually move on to developing the post and other endpoints where you can add the parameters. We have some request query params, and then path variables, etc. So we'll explore everything, so be online. Before we jump into the actual process of starting the project, I would like to discuss a couple of points, that is what is the prerequisite. Okay, so in order to create a Spring Boot projects, you definitely have some prerequisite. Okay, the very first thing is Java development kit. Now you must have heard of being the Java development, the JDK, right, where you have this particular latest versions being developed, and then latest features being added up. So make sure you download that and install your JDK. Okay, so the latest version up now is about 23 or 24. So you with the latest version of Spring Boot is approx 3.5, I think, at the latest version when I'm recording this particular video. So 3.5 of Spring Boot is going to definitely support the latest version, or up to the JDK 17 or later versions. Okay, so make sure your Java version and the Spring Boot versions are this. Okay, then you go to this particular the build tool, so you can either choose between the Gradle or Maven. So make sure you are using the latest version, and also these build tools are very helpful in order to generate the jar, add the dependencies, etc., and clean your project and download the repository from the repository folder to your local machine. So this will help you with the transitive dependencies over there. Then comes in which IDE you wanted to develop this particular code. So there are different IDEs. The very first or the preferable one is IntelliJ. You can use STS, Eclipse, or Visual Code, what of your choice, but in this video I'm going to take you through the IntelliJ. Okay, so that's all for the prerequisite. Once we know this particular prerequisite, as I mentioned, we need to go to the Spring initializer. Okay, I will show you the exact process of how from the web browser how you can go there. Okay, but just before going there, I would like to tell you that you need to add the group artifacts and the name, description, package name, and etc. for that, so that you can develop your and download that particular project in your local and import it. Okay, now let's go to the browser. Now start searching with the Spring initializer here for Spring. Now you will see the very first project or very first search what is up here. Now in this particular web page, if you see, this is basically a web tool which is created by the Spring Boot itself to create a projects from here. Okay, and you can download that. Now the very first thing what we discussed is you have make use of the Maven. So I am choosing Maven over here. You can make use of your own build tool. If you are using Groovy or Kotlin, that's of your choice. Gradle, and then you choose the language. Then uh, in this particular version, you have to choose the Spring Boot version. Now I always try to tell you to download the latest version, the stable version. Don't ever pick up the snapshot or the beta version. Always try to go for the latest version, which is the stable version. Okay, then you'll see there is a other details like project metadata we need to create it, right? Then we'll have a demo REST API been developed. Okay, now if you see here, then I'm choosing the jar version, and then I'm choosing the latest For now it is 17. I can actually choose to have the 21 as well, and then I will add the dependencies over here. Okay, now make sure you add this particular group id, artifact name, and the description properly, so that when you are trying to develop the project, you have that particular dependencies properly added. Now let's say I'm just developing a web project. I need the REST endpoint, so I will make use of the web starter dependency. Okay, uh, once everything is been chosen over here, then we can generate that particular project over here. Now you see it is getting downloaded over here. Okay, particular project, extract it, and then open this particular project in the IntelliJ. Now in order to open this, you have to just go to the open, and then that particular navigate to that particular folder and open this particular project over here. Now if you see here, this, let's look at the structure over here. Now you see the normal maven project, whatever it is, where we have the main project here, then we have the mvn directory, then the resource directory over here, then under this there is a main java resources and the test folder over here. The important file to notice here is the pom.xml over here. Now if you look at this, the parent id is this. Okay, and we have chosen the starter parent. Now if you are not aware of the starter project, I've made a brief video on that part. Just check out my channel and search for the spring boot starter. What are, I've briefly explained, like, what are the different starters, what it exactly it is used for, and what are the, why it is very beneficial. Okay, so I've explained each and everything in very very detailed. Okay, so make sure you watch that particular video. Now if you see here, after that you will have this particular project name over here, you have the latest version over here. Okay, and then the web dependency. Okay, another thing to note over here is that under this particular web dependency, this is one of the starter dependency, that is web one. Now if you just see inside this, there are a lot of transitive dependencies. I've also covered this particular details in depth in that particular video which I have mentioned, where you will see, like, there are different starters, JSON. These are all, transitive dependencies which are internally automatically being taken care by the spring boot, so you doesn't have to worry about the specific version and the compatible version. And also there will be a less runtime or no runtime errors if you are trying to, deal automatically with the spring boot. Now as I mentioned, if you add this, it will be beneficial. Okay, then let's try to download. So what you do under this particular maven, you try to download this particular source over here, because what will happen at the start, this particular the libraries will not be available, because there are, latestly, new java versions is getting changed up. There are new spring boot versions keep on adding, right? So there is never like a stable version being, there. So there will always upgrades and features being happening, so make sure you are up downloading those things. Now once you do this, okay, make sure you reload this particular project and see. Okay, now if you see here, this project has been downloaded, the dependencies and everything. Now if you see, go to this particular project, this is the main application where it gets starts. Okay, so let me just run and see what happens. Okay, so here actually there is some issue with the port, so let me go to the add this particular port, that is 999. Okay, and then let me start the project again. Now you see here my application is started on the port number 999. Okay, so I till so far I think you all got, like, how you can download the project and import it into the IntelliJ, and how to start your application. Okay, so I've also made a brief video on what this particular at the rate spring boot application is about, and why this is, like, the starting point of your application. Make sure you watch that. Also about this particular run method, This is, I've explained in very detail, like how what internally it happens in the when you run this particular method inside the main method. Okay, now we'll look another attributes over here. There is one application dot property which we already looked into. Now in this particular resource folder, you can either configure your application dot properties or application dot yml. Okay, you have your test over here, so there is a demo test application whatever you're trying to develop. Okay, pom.xml is here. Okay, so everything actually you can add it. Now in this particular same if you see here the package whatever it is created, you can create your controller, your service, your repository layer over here, and then you can develop the rest endpoints over there. So we'll definitely look into that. Just have patience, we'll go through that. Now we'll first create our REST endpoints over here. So in this, I think we'll require three things. One is the REST controller, the controller class. Second, in that particular thing, I will try to add a getmapping class method over there. And in that particular method, I'm trying to return that particular string over there. Okay. So these three basic things I will be trying to write it over here. Okay. Let's begin that. Now under this, let me create one package called controller. Okay, now let me create a demo controller for your here. Okay, now under this, what I will do, first of all, I will mark this as an REST controller over here. Okay, now just for your information, there is another annotation called @controller. Okay, now you just check out, like there is a much difference when it comes to @controller and @rest controller. When you're dealing with the specifically the REST, right? We are making use of the REST controller because when you're trying to develop a simple web services or the REST endpoints, earlier we used to have this particular controller, and along with that, in order to map it to the your UI, we used to make use of the response body. Now this controller is nothing but the combination of controller and the response body. So that is the reason, instead of making this two particular annotations, we are making use of this particular single annotation over here. Okay, so that's the one thing to note. Okay, second, if you see, I'm trying to add one get mapping over here. Now I will just add one URL over here, that is, let's say, for hello. Now under this, let's say I'm trying to create one string over here, sample output. Okay, I'm just returning echo over here. Okay, so I just, if you see, let's make it this small. Okay, or just an echo. Now if you see here, this is the first REST endpoint what we have written here. Now you make a note, this is the get method. So in HTTP there are different kinds of methods, and it has got various denotions. Like, let's say you wanted to retrieve something, you will make use of the get method over here. Now HTTP method has, different methods had their different purposes. Let's say you want to create the resources, you make use of the post. Okay, so I've made a brief video on that as well. Please make a look on that, where I explained each method, what exactly they are used. Okay, what are the advantages, what are, like, in what scenario we use that. Okay, now I will just restart my application. Now let's go to the browser and then type that particular localhost 999 and then echo over here. Just let us me remove this particular. Okay, I've made a spelling mistake over here. Now you see here, it is returning your echo. So I hope you are able to understand how you expose your endpoints. So this was a very simple endpoint we have exposed. Now we'll look into how we can make this particular much more complex and much more advanced. Okay, so here So before going to the other things, right, let's check out, like, what we have discussed so far. We have discussed about the controller over here, we have discussed about the get mapping over here, okay, and also that is returning that particular value over here, okay. So just note that, here, if you see this method, whatever it is getting returned up, it is a simple string over here, and Spring Boot is automatically going to convert that into the response body, okay. That is what the wonder is about, okay. So we already ran this particular project and then, showed you. Now let's go to the advanced part, that is adding the some more details, okay. Now we'll look into the other part, that is, let's say I will create another method over here, okay. We'll look into at the rate request mapping over here. Now just wait and watch, I will try to explain you that particular part new. Now if you see here, I'm trying to create a general purpose request mapping over here, and you will see here there is a method over here. I'm defining that particular request method as get over here, okay. Let me copy this particular method, okay. Instead of this sample output new, I'm just mentioning that new echo voice over here. Now if you see the difference between these two, you can either do this way or you can either do this way. So it is something exactly the same thing whatever we have done in a short way, okay. So this was the earlier way where we used to write this particular request mapping, and then we used to have the value, and then you have this particular defined what kind of method it is, okay. And this particular things are, little bit was readable, but it was little bit code we have to edit it. Now this is much more clean and concise, okay, and it is also reducing the boilerplate things, right. So you just made this particular thing, okay. Let me rerun this application. Now here let me type echo new. Now you see there is a new echo. So rest everything is same. So that was the prior earlier way to do how you used to write the get method, okay. So now prefer writing get mapping, because that is one of the best way to write it. Now what happens that you wanted to extract some value from the URL itself, okay. So your requirement is like, let's say, so for some products, okay, you want some requirement, let's say some condition to be passed up, or some string or something has to be passed up, some certain conditions, okay. So in that case we will make use of one of the path variables that is used in the rest, okay. So you want to extract that particular value from the URL. In that case we make use of the path variable. Let's see how you can write those, okay. Now here if you see, I will have this particular uh, get mapping again defined over there. So I will what I make, just call, let me copy this particular thing. I will just change this particular name with path variable over here, okay. Now you make a note here. What I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to add one case over here, okay. So let's say I'm trying to add some name over here. What I'm trying to do is that from this I am adding one path variable over here, okay, which is going to be binded this particular name over there, okay. So whatever you have added here, it is going to bind it with this particular name, and for that, in order to come in place, we read at the rate path variable, okay. Now once you have this, let's return this particular name over here in the, okay. Now this is just simple. What you can do, you can let's say, ideally what happens from the controller, it goes to the service and service to the repository. So you can further flow this particular value to the service and then the repository, and ideally use that particular in the JPR repository, search certain criteria and then return it. Now let's me rerun this. Now if you see here, I will try to have some name, let's say example over here. Now you see here, it is printing echo, and then there is an example as well. Now that's where you pass this particular variable, path variable in that, and then now uh, when you're developing any REST endpoints, based on your architecture design purpose, you can make use of this. Now this is one of the best way to get that particular variable, and also this is one of the way where you can actually stop your SQL injection happening. Let's say in prior to this particular thing, what used to happen is that we used to certainly have this particular variable added that, and then this particular same dynamic value used to pass on to the SQL query, but the query was written in a string format. But after that, there are, in order to stop this particular SQL injection, we make use of the let's say you're using Hibernate query criteria path is there. You use the parameters or meters based statements, that is prepared statement, to execute that. Okay, so that's how you use that. Now post this, we'll try to see, like, little bit one more complex URL. Okay, now here if you see, there is only one single path variable over here. Now you can also have a requirement where there is also a, let's say you have some details. Okay, and you wanted to pass some, let's say, ID over here. Okay, let's say the ID. Okay, now you see here, this particular, this is the static, this is the dynamic, again this is static, and then, so based on your REST endpoints, on your complexity of your features, you can add those particular variable. Now I've just make this as an multiple. Now here if you see, I can make use of another comma based here, and instead of string, actually I will add this particular here. Now you can make use of this, and then you can print that again. Okay, let me add details. Let me add some space over here so that it is little bit easy to showcase, and then ultimately I will add the value over here. Okay, let me restart this. My application is started. Now under this, after this, actually let me add the details, and then I will let me add one over here. Now you see, this is the static one. Again it has taken the dynamic one. Let's say now try to add two over here. See here, everything is same. It is going to give you that particular value over here. Okay, so let's say if I am changing some test here. Okay, now you see this is changed over here. Now there is another way, there is, it is called as an request params. Now what happens, or what we looked into, that is the URL in that you are passing that particular path variable in the URL itself, right? Now you can use some query params as well over there, where you will passing the in the query string based, like, key value pair on the URL itself. Okay, I will show you that. So basically that is called as an @request param. So we can make use of that particular annotation over here. Now let me write that and show you. Now here, same thing, actually let me take this over here. What I will do now, I will add some, I will remove this. There is one request param over here. Okay, now you see here, now this is one of the optional, let's say. Okay, now what I'm trying to do here is that I have actually, in the query param, I'm trying to pass that value. So let's say I want this particular uh, let's say I'm passing some query value over here. Let's say you want some value to be passed to the database. Okay, so I'm passing this particular value over here. Okay, what happens, I've just added as an optional let me remove this echo request. Okay, now you see here, the same thing, actually I will try to print it over here. Okay, let me change the name as request param. Okay, now you see here, what I have done is that so earlier, where as I had mentioned, using the path variable, we have used it. Now we will make use of the request param. Let me rerun this particular project. Now if you go to the browser, echo, and then request. Now after this, I will start the query param over here. Okay, So let's say I'm trying to add the name over here, something like over here. Now you see here, whatever value I've passed in this particular query, it is passing, and then it is getting that particular value printed over here. So that's it what exactly the request param is about. Now we'll get into more details. Now let's say I will just copy this value over here. Now let's say the one what we looked in, like, there will be some mandatory value is there, right? Now let's say there is some non-mandatory value has been added. So what you can do in that case, here you can add the, let's say your query param is not a mandatory one. Okay, so what you will do in this query param, here required is equal to false, you will place it. Okay, also one thing you will do, that let's say you are not passing something over, what you can do, you can add some default value as well. Let's say the default value is 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, now request param. Okay, let me make this to the, okay, let me make it to the one, and then let me restart it. Let me rerun this. I had actually misplaced the same name over here. That's the reason it did not start it. Now here, if you can see, if I'm not giving some value, the default value is coming over here. Let's say if I give some value over here, okay, in the query param, let's say if I'm giving some value, okay, that is, yeah, in this query param, like, now if you see here, actually I am trying to give you some optional value over here, right? Now you see here, whatever value I'm giving over here, it is coming over here. Let's say I change this to some, right, it is giving you that particular value. Okay, so that's how you write that particular request param over. Now in this video I have covered the very basic get method as well. Only in single method I've covered. Now similar to this, there are different http methods, like put is there, post is there are trace is there, head is there, delete method is there. So based on your CRUD operation, based on your requirement, you can develop those particular endpoints and expose that. Okay, so the idea would be same. Okay, only the rest http methods would be different for different purposes. For checking out that what exactly which method is for which reason, just check out my other videos where I've explained that. Okay, if this video was helpful, please share it with the needy people. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching.